wanted to ask my husband for open relationship, but he found out and took away everything. Have you ever felt the urge to do something that was always on your mind and let loose? Well, letting yourself go and you're letting your mind take control without discipline and do what you've always wanted to do. Well, I had thought I was making myself feel alive again. I wanted to have that feeling that everyone has, a feeling of being free again. I wanted to remind myself that you can also let loose or have fun while you are married. Have you ever shared your deepest desires with someone, only to have them disappear from your life? Imagine telling someone you love that you want a future together, but with the freedom to explore connections with others. That's what happened to me. I opened up about my need for an open relationship, hoping for understanding and acceptance. Instead, he vanished without a trace, leaving me wondering what went wrong. One thing about me is that I always say what I feel, without even care of how you would receive it and what you would do about it, but as long as I have told you what I wanted you to know. But in this case, it was different. I didn't expect him to act the way he did. I had thought that if I open up to him and tell him how I feel, he would understand and somehow sit down with me and discuss the issue at hand in a civil way. Instead, he just packed and left to only God knows where. I just couldn't believe him. I mean, yes, I loved him, but why would he act so childish? I mean, because most people nowadays, especially women, no longer be themselves when they get married. Some lose themselves to a point that they make marriages look like it's a union to someone's true self. Some end up regretting ever getting married because they would no longer be allowed to do things that had made them happy. They become people they are not, which kills most of our married sisters. It does not feel free when you get married. This took a lot of bravery to share, so I only accept advice and not judgments. They call me Veronica Cooper, female 27, and my husband is Mike Andrews, male 37. We first met at a golf club estate. There was a business meeting that they had at the estate while playing gold. I was a waitress for the day. Well, I was studying towards my master's degree in psychology, so I was doing a side job while I was studying so that Elle would be able to make ends meet and be able to pay for my studies. That day, I was assigned to work on the field making sure that the business gurus were well taken care of and they had everything that they needed. So as I was catering for them, I slightly made a mistake. I missed a step, and the drink that I was holding accidentally fell on one of the businessmen's lap. The guy shouted at me and called me stupid and other harsh names. I tried apologizing, but the guy wasn't having it and he was a blazing fire. Mike came to my rescue and spoke with the guy, telling him that it was a mistake and he will pay for the damage that I had done to the guy's golfing short pants. I didn't know what to say, so I just thanked Mike for the rescue. That day was the toughest day in my working history. I felt so belittled, humiliated, embarrassed, and stupid. It's really hard being a waitress because you always have to put a smile on your face, even if you are not feeling well. Or if a customer didn't like what you have served them, then they call you names and stupid. It's really hard working under the term of a customer is always right, even if they are the ones at fault. Some managers end up firing a waitress because of a customer's complaint and telling the manager that your service is bad. It's hard to always try to be calm and keep on smiling even when the situation doesn't allow you. But because you need the job, you have to follow the rules and put your feelings aside. Anyway, as I kept apologizing to the arrogant businessman, Mike told me to stop apologizing and go continue with my work. I won't lie, I was relieved when I was away from that arrogant man. Later on, Mike came to my working station and apologized for how his associate behaved, but I would have to help him clean that man's golfing shorts since I'm the one who missed a step and poured an orange juice on his white golfing shorts. As much as it was going to cost me almost all my salary, but I knew I had to clean up that man's shorts no matter what. Mike then asked him to give him my number so that he can call me when we have to go and clean the golfing short pants. I hesitated at first. I was only 20 years and I think he was 30 at that time. I eventually gave him my number because the guy was going to help me clean the arrogant man's short pants. He called after 2 days, mind you. At that time, I was thinking, how was I going to afford golfing pants? Or how was I going to get money to clean it? I met up with Mike at the mall. The guy bought new golfing short pants for the arrogant man. Since then we got along, we would chat more through WhatsApp. Mike was a sweet, loving, and caring man who liked being cocky. He was just a breath of fresh air, a best friend, a good advisor, and an awesome lunch dates partner. 2 months after he told me that he couldn't hold himself anymore, he needed someone to grow old with. At first I didn't understand what he was saying until he asked me to be his girlfriend officially. I was just lost for words. The guy is afforded and has everything that he wants and needs, so why would he want to have a girlfriend as simple as me? So we dated for like 8 months, and I can actually say that it was just everything and more. During those months, he had taken me to meet with his parents. They were such a welcoming and loving family, especially his mother. Oh, that woman is such a sweetheart with a good heart. And not to mention his sister, she was just a breath of fresh air. She had the vibe that I actually needed, and she was my age, which was a bonus. Well, I didn't have any friends, so Mike's sister became the best friend I had ever had. My relationship with Mike was just a bliss, and it was actually what I had been praying for. He was like my answered prayers, not knowing that the guy actually had anger issues and bipolar disorder. Mike would always make sure that I was happy, secured, and had everything that I needed. The guy even paid for tuition fees, imagine, and I will forever be grateful for what he had done to me. Well, since I do not have any family members in Woodlands, Singapore, it was hard for me to take Mike home to my family, but I had introduced him to them via Skype, which helped a lot. After a year, I think Mike proposed and I said yes, but I had my terms and conditions. He got confused when I said that I had terms and conditions, but he listened to me. I actually regret even starting to address my desires to him because I didn't like the outcome of it. It actually made me feel like I had driven the love of my life away because of my greed and desires. I won't lie. I needed what I needed in a relationship. I was still young, so I needed to explore some things. After years of dating, we decided to tie the knot. I was the happiest woman ever. Months went by and I was starting to feel a little bored, especially when my husband is always away on his golfing trips, his part of the Golf Nation tournament. I always get tempted to go out clubbing and doing something crazy and let loose just a bit before I reach my 30s, but I always contain myself and not go out at all. I would discipline myself. My temptation ends being a thought. But there was a time when my husband left for a golfing trip. I could resist the urge of going out with my friends from college. I saw that as the perfect opportunity to break free from the monotony of my married life and have a little fun. So I started by cleaning the house and doing some much-needed grocery shopping. But as the day went on, I found myself feeling more and more restless. I felt the urge of wanting to let loose a little. I needed to open my relationship with Mike, but I didn't know how and where I could start addressing the issue or breaking the news to him. I didn't know how he would react, and I was scared of the outcome. I had so many what-ifs in my head, but I knew I needed to tell him about my desires. After a lot of thought, I decided to call the girl that I was working with. Her name is Prudence, female, 29. Prudence and I were attending the same university, and she is the one who introduced me to the manager of the restaurant and catering company that I was working in. That's how we got along, so I called her and asked her to join me on a date. Luckily, she agreed and told me that she wanted to introduce me to a new restaurant and a chilling spot that had recently opened not far from where we worked. So we agreed to meet in town so that she would take me to that new spot. Little did I know that the girl actually wanted to take me to the club. I didn't ask any questions because I trusted Prudence, and I knew that she wouldn't take me to a place that harms me or gets me in trouble with my husband. I really thought we were just going to eat, have a few drinks, then later on, before the sun sets, we would part ways. But that wasn't the case with Prudence. Later on, Prudence and I met and we had our lunch, then decided to drink while I told her about my desires and how my husband had been absent lately. We drank and ended up enjoying the good music and the vibe. We had a couple of drinks and two guys came to us and asked us to join them. Because of Prudence's forwardness, she accepted the guy's request of joining them when things would get hectic. One of the guys approached me and started giving me compliments. He was very charming and a bit handsome, younger than me, probably 25. Prudence then suddenly said, "Let's move the party elsewhere." But how I wish she didn't say that, but I couldn't predict what was about to happen. I wanted to refuse, but at some point I didn't want to leave Prudence with unknown guys that we had recently known, so I stayed and obeyed. I know that was a stupid move for me because I was married, but that time I had put my marriage life aside and went with the moment. We went to the Orchid Country Club Hotel, which was about 5 kilometers from the restaurant. As we were there drinking with the guys, I started to notice that there's 2 of us and 2 of them, meaning everyone had a partner. I started feeling a little uneasy as I was the only one married amongst these people, and they were so chilled. I won't lie, those guys were funny. The guy who was giving me a compliment came to me as I was gazing at the view outside. He introduced himself as Gary Lawrence, male, 25 or 6, I'm not sure. He had a way of making me feel comfortable. Well, this is when I realized I needed to loosen myself a bit as I was feeling a bit of guilt. We started to talk about life and conspiracies, and we realized we had something in common, and drinks kept on coming. The music kept on playing, and our conversation kept getting deeper, and I found myself drawn to his charming smile and kind eyes. He was just a breath of fresh air. We fell asleep on the couch, cuddling each, and I was grateful that nothing happened to us. At first, I felt a mixture of guilt and excitement that nothing had happened, and I had an opportunity to let loose. I had never done anything like that before, and I wasn't sure if I could ever forgive myself, but nothing happened right. So why feel guilty when nothing has happened? So as the day went on, I found myself losing myself in the moment, and the guilt began to fade away. Our trip came to an end, and I knew that I had to go back to my boring house, plus my husband was coming back, so I had to go. When I got home, I had found my husband already back, which was a shock to me because I didn't expect him to be back earlier since I had also tried to be back earlier than him. Well, I guess he had beat the traffic. He asked where I was coming from, so I told him that I had gone to a night away with the girls. But I left the guy's part aside because if I had mentioned it, hell would have broken loose. Sometimes my husband and I would spend our weekends together, but it wasn't fun because he would always watch golf games and I would be sitting with him reading a book, which was purely boring for me. My mind was thinking about the trip that me and the girls had. I'd been feeling neglected by my husband for quite some time, even if he was around. He was always busy with work and his golfing games never seemed to have time for me. I felt like I was just a mere obligation to him, rather than a beloved partner. I won't lie and say the girls' night was boring because it wasn't. It was actually full of life and fun. I enjoyed every moment of it, and I wished I could turn back the hands of time and go back to that night. Months passed. My husband had been too occupied with work and his golfing games. To tell the truth, golf really bores me. There is actually no fun in it. It shows that it's a game for rich people. So one day, a guy from the trip texted me on Instagram. I was so shocked about why he would send me a text on my Instagram. But I didn't ask him anything, I just replied to his messages, which were actually a very good distraction because I was somehow bored at home. So he had asked me to accompany him to his friend's party. I hesitated at first because I didn't know what I would tell my husband. But God came through for me. And I really needed to get some air and let loose a little. I had been cooped up in the house for way too long. I had been itching to let loose and have some fun, but I didn't want to do anything that would jeopardize our marriage. So that weekend was a great opportunity for me to let loose a little. As soon as my husband was gone, I decided to take advantage of the situation. I put on my favorite dress, did my hair and makeup, and waited for Harold to come and fetch me because that was the plan. When we got there, I felt the vibe already. There were so many people, and I guess it was friends and maybe colleagues. I spotted his friends that I had met during that night. They were with their partners who were very much friendly and full of fun. The music was blasting. Everyone was having their good time, minding their own business, and that was what I really needed. It felt so liberating to be able to be myself without worrying about what my husband would think. The next day, I woke up feeling a bit hungover and regretful. I had a bit too much to drink the night before, and I was worried that my husband would notice when he got back. But as I looked in the mirror, I saw a confident and carefree version of myself staring back. I realized that I didn't need to be perfect all the time, and that it was okay to let loose and have fun. Over the next few days, I continued to explore my newfound freedom whenever my husband was either at work or went golfing. I continued chatting and going out with Gary. He made me feel so much alive, as he also introduced me to new clubs around Woodlands. I knew from there that I had found my real self. I had finally found the person I had always wanted to be. Yes, my friend Prudence and I would go out, but she respected my husband, so they didn't want to be on his bad books. My friends treat Mike like he was a god or something. Sometimes I would think she was fooling him or me to think that she respected my marriage. One happy morning, I woke up happy and in a great mood that weekend. Simon and I had a very steamy and loving, intimate moment the previous night. We had a lot of lovemaking. So I decided to wake up early to prepare a nice breakfast for my husband so we would get ready for the day, as we had planned to go out together to pamper ourselves and try to bring back the spark that we once had before we got married. I had planned everything, you know. I was so happy that I was going to spend time with my husband after a long time of him always going out. So that morning he came down the stairs wearing his golfing clothes and came down with his kit. I didn't understand why he was wearing that, so I asked why he was wearing his golfing clothes while we had plans for the day. He just gave me a very lousy excuse and told me that his golf buddies had texted him and told him about the game that was taking place on the very same day that was supposed to be our day. My mood just instantly went down the drain. I was so angry at him, but I was also angry at myself for thinking that Mike was actually going to choose me for one, and not his golfing games or his buddies. I mean, why would someone promise to spend time with you and even reassure you that the day was only for us, and we were going to switch off our phones so that we would not get any disturbances? But his big head switched on his phone and got his buddy's message about a certain game that was taking place just when we had planned something else. He had reassured me that he would be available for lunch and dinner. Later on, I had a hope that Mike would have been back and we would continue with our day like we had planned. So I decided to cook all of his favorites for dinner. I had really missed my husband, and that time was the only perfect time to tell my husband Mike about my desires. So I prepared everything and even texted to come back home earlier. I knew that when I deliver my issue of desires, he would not act like any normal person would, but I just didn't know the consequences that would come with the fact that I had told him about my desires. He came back earlier just like I had asked him to. So we ate over a light conversation, and I knew that it was time to drop the bomb and address the elephant in the room, with the hope that he would somehow understand why I needed what I needed. So after we had dinner, I asked to speak to him before he went to bed. So I told him that I really wanted to grow old with him and start a family, I told him and reassured him that what I was about to tell him didn't mean that there was something that had changed between us, because there wasn't anything. I literally said, "I've been thinking." That's how I began. My voice was hesitant yet determined. "I love you more than words can express, Mike, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." His eyes softened, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I feel the same way, Ronnie." That's how he would call my name. "You're my everything." I then took a deep breath, gathering my courage. But I also felt like there's a part of me that's restless, that craves something more. I want to explore, to experience different things, but I don't want to lose you. I want an open relationship. Mike's expression faltered, surprise mingling with uncertainty. An open relationship? I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. Yes, I want us to be honest with each other, to communicate openly about our desires and needs. I still want you in my life, Mike, but I need the freedom to grow, to discover who I am outside of our relationship. Silence stretched between us. The weight of what I had said really made things difficult for me. Plus, Mike just went on a quiet mode. Finally, Mike spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can do that, Ronnie. I thought we were meant to be together, just us against the world." Tears welled up in my eyes as she reached for Mike's hand. It was harder than I had anticipated. "Please, Mike, this doesn't change how much I love you, but I need this. I need to explore this part of myself." Mike roughly withdrew his hand, his gaze distant. "I need some time to think, Veronica. I can't promise anything right now." I knew that our relationship was hanging down the hill, so I had to expect anything from Mike. So I first dropped the bomb of the fact that I wanted us to explore new ventures. So I suggested that we would open our relationship to any opportunities that would come with that statement. He calmly asked why I wanted to open our relationship, and I knew that when he was that calm, it meant only one thing. He was angry, and I should expect him to do or say anything because of his anger. I furthered by telling him that I was ready to start our family, and I won't lie, I was ready to give him the child that he had always wanted. I basically told him that if he agrees that we open our relationship, then we would or should start planning for our child. After I told him all about my desires and what can actually help our marriage to have that spark. Our marriage was already in shambles, already in a very hard rocking place, so I had to find a solution that would help us. He didn't want to hear anything after that. He suspected that I had been cheating on him and assumed that since I wanted us to open our marriage or relationship, I was already cheating on him. I tried explaining everything in detail to him, but he just didn't want to hear it, to the point that he ended up calling me names and told me that if he ever found out that I had cheated on him, he would make sure that I suffer for the rest of my life. I just didn't understand why he was suddenly angry for addressing the underlying problem that we were facing, and told him about my desires. We had a very heated argument that led us to even go to bed angry at each other. I really thought Mike was being unfair and inconsiderate of my needs, but I couldn't tell that because he was already enraged and ready to attack. I gave him some space to at least digest what I had just told him, hoping that he would wake up the following day better, and we would have a civil conversation like adults and married couples. The following day, he woke up early and prepared for work. I tried making a conversation with him, but he didn't want anything to do with me because he didn't even eat his breakfast that I had made for him. I really thought that Mike was actually very childish and inconsiderate. I mean, why would I stay in an unhappy marriage? Or maybe let me not say unhappy but unsatisfied marriage while I knew that I had to address the issue with my partner. I actually respected him enough to cheat and open my marriage or relationship without his permission. That day, I decided to just go out to get some fresh air, and maybe by later Mike would come home calm, so that we would continue with the conversation. Later on, Mike was back from work, so Mike came to the living room looking like he was ready to kill. His face and body language was full of rage, I couldn't even think that he might have found out about my abomination. So he looked at me with eyes full of rage, hurt, and disappointment. He asked to speak with me on the side. Without thinking about what would have made him so angry, I followed him to our bedroom. When we got there, he threw a phone at me. I got confused about why he would throw a phone at me, so I looked at him hoping to get the answer I had been asking myself. Instead, he told me to press play on the video that was posted on Twitter, so I did as told without thinking again because I wanted to see what had made my husband angry. When I pressed play, I got the shock of my life. Harold had posted a video of him and me making out at his friend's house. Worst part, the video was even trending. I was trembling and shaking. I was lost for words. I couldn't even utter the apology because I didn't know what was happening. I had thought that nothing had happened between Gary and I, so the video really confused me, and why do I not remember anything? The way Mike was super upset and asked if that was the reason why I had wanted to open our marriage so that I could do those nasty things. My heart was beating so fast like I was having either a panic attack or a minor heart attack. What made my blood rush like that was the fact that I didn't remember anything, and who would have been that heatless to post such a video on social media? I felt my reputation, my dignity, and my image being ruined. I just didn't know how to react to the video, so I just decided to go to the park to unwind and at least try to calm down. When I went back to the house after like 4 or 5 hours that I had spent in the park trying to digest and think about the video that was trending, and the fact that I didn't remember anything, I wanted to know who would have leaked that video. I knew that I needed to find out. But the revelations really shocked me to the core. Okay, so when I got home, Mike wasn't there. I called out his name all around the house and even tried to call him, but nothing. His phone was suddenly off and it was taking me straight to voicemail. I left him a lot of messages, voice messages, and text messages. He actually left me a letter that stated that I should sleep with one eye because I had made him and he was going to destroy me, which got me really scared because I didn't know what he was referring to and what he would do. Never trust an angry lion because it can bite you roughly to a point that you would eventually find yourself useless and want to end things or disappear. And with the words that I had said, Mike vanished from Woodlands, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shattered dreams. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but there was no sign of him. I searched every corner of our small town, hoping for a glimpse of his familiar face, but he remained elusive, as if swallowed by the vastness of the world beyond. I tried calling again, but still the same results. My mind was racing and my heart was pounding so much I felt myself suffocating, but I knew that I had to first find Mike so that I would explain to him what had happened the following night. I tried tracking his phone using my computer because we had that agreement of tracking each other's whereabouts, using either our phones or car trackers. When I checked, I found out that his phone was off and his car was actually in the garage, meaning he had left the car. 2 weeks later, I had even given up on looking for Mike. I was worried about him. I won't lie because he had left without saying anything besides the threatening letter that he left. So I decided to go to the shops and buy some house essentials and groceries. As I was busy putting things in a trolley, I bumped into Gary. I got furious once again and confronted him about the video. He told me that his friend was the one who had leaked the video with help of his new girlfriend, Prudence. I just couldn't believe it, I had really thought that Prudence had my back, but clearly she was just a snake in a sheepskin. Another thing that made me scared was the fact that I knew that Mike's sister had seen the video, and I was sure that the parents also knew, so I had destroyed the kind of relationship that I had with Mike's parents. Later on, I decided to go to Mike's home to look for him and apologize for the heartache that I had caused the family and the shame that I had caused my husband. I didn't know what I would say to Mike's sister. I just opted to apologize to the parents only. Unfortunately, when I got there, Mike was not home. His mother told me that he hadn't been at home for a month, so they didn't know where he had gone. I got really worried about Mike and felt guilty of the things that had happened. Later on, about like a week later, I received a notification stating that someone had withdrawn money from my offshore account and my life savings account. Mind you, that time I didn't even notice that my cards were gone. I panicked and thought that I was being scammed or something. As if that wasn't enough, a truck came. Well, a big truck, and repossessed the cars that were in the garage. My car along with Mike's. I asked why they were taking the cars. They told me that they were reported as stolen and they were no longer getting paid for. I just couldn't believe it, I tried calling Mike again, but it was still not going through until I decided to just give up. I went straight into a depressing state and I really thought I was going to lose myself at that time. After the cars were gone, I received divorce papers stating that the owner of the house wanted me gone within 2 days. My health was not giving me any hope because everything was just too much. I had lost the only person who had shown me genuine love. I was happy in my marriage, but my greed and desires clouded all the good things that Mike had done for me. I knew that I had to think of where I was going to go because I had no relatives in Singapore, so I had to try and make means to get home in England. Luckily, Mike had taught me to keep some cash in a safe place just in case I get in trouble or something happens. So I took that money and bought a plane ticket. I just couldn't stay any longer in Singapore. I had thought that I was done with everything that made me move to Singapore. I mean, I had gone there to study, and I did with the help of Mike. I completed my master's degree in psychology. I left Singapore with a heavy heart. I had never thought that my desires would actually lead me to that kind of stage in life. I lost the love of my life. He just vanished from our town, and I really wanted to know where he was and if he was okay. That's what happened to me. I laid my heart on the line, expressing my hopes and needs. Instead of understanding or discussing it further, he chose to vanish from our town without a word. It left me questioning everything, the sincerity of his feelings, the strength of our connection. I was left with a mix of emotions, hurt, confusion, and a tinge of anger. But through it all, I realized the importance of being true to myself and my needs, even if it means facing difficult outcomes. As time passed, I learned to live with the ache in my heart, the bittersweet reminder of a love that was once so pure and unyielding. And though Mike was no longer by my side, I held on to the memories that we shared, grateful for the time we had together, however fleeting it may have been. I really thought Mike would understand my problems, but I now regret even opening my mouth and confessing about my desires. I really don't know where to start looking for Mike because I feel like I owe him an apology for the heartache that I had caused. Do you guys think he can maybe forgive me and give me a chance to at least mend our relationship after what had happened? I truly regret what I had done to Mike. I need any advice that you can give me. Please assist me. I'm drowning, really.
I never thought I'd run to Reddit for advice, but here I am. I don't know the next step to take right now. My husband found out about my secret affair, and then he set a trap for me and my app. My husband, Vikram, funny 40, is the definition of an alpha male husband. He's a successful man who likes to be in charge. He never likes to lose control of a situation. So when he found out I was cheating on him, he found a way to make me regret it. My husband and I, Kamal, 32, have been married for the past 10 years. We have 2 children together, a 5-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy. I know a lot of people will feel the need to judge me for cheating on my husband when I have a complete family, but I have never really felt complete in my marriage. Marriage is supposed to make one feel complete, happy, and content, but I have never really experienced any of these things with my husband. Happiness became a strange feeling to me almost every day. The only light I was fortunate to see was the birth of my 2 children who completed me in a way, but even that too wasn't enough. When my children go to school, I'm welcomed by that feeling of emptiness all over again. It's not helped that the husband I married does not even notice that. He's a perfectionist who's focused on being at the top and keeping his 6 figures constant. I needed more, so I had to search elsewhere. It was a decision that took a lot of courage and self-doubt, but I had to do it for myself. What I never expected was the consequences that followed. I am a mixed woman from Mumbai, India. My mother is from Canada while my father is from India. Growing up with both ethnicities was a little bit of trouble for me. On one hand, I had my strict father who restricted almost all my activities, and on the other hand, I had my strict mother who did not want to restrict my activities just to spite my father. Yes, I practically grew up in a broken home with barely any love and attention. I grew up doing stupid things just to see if my mother would look into my eyes and tell me how much she cared for me. None of that ever happened. My father, he practically ignored my existence every single day. When I was old enough to get married, my father insisted that he would arrange my marriage for me. I did not want that. I just wanted to go to college, a place far away from my parents, then get my freedom and fall in love with a man I actually like. But none of those desires came true. I was to do exactly what my parents wanted me to do. I could not run away. They would have found me. My father worked at an airport. Of course, he had connections. How would I board a flight and not be seen? I had been desperate to get away, but I was not stupid. I ran to my mother for help, but she told me there was nothing she could do. The first and only time my mother was not ready to fight my father was when I needed her to fight him the most. She turned her back on me and did not look back. The first meeting with Vikram and his family was one of the most depressing moments of my life. Even though I knew I was getting into an arranged marriage, I still expected my husband to show me some sort of friendliness. Instead, Vikram was guarded. He did not even try to impress me. Yeah, I was dressed up extravagantly and forced to take etiquette classes so I could make an impression. 2 more meetings later, my marriage with Vikram was finalized. I had no say in it. I could not even choose the color I wanted to wear on my own wedding day. The man I was meant to marry had not even spoken a single word to me before our marriage. Like, I felt suffocated because I began to feel like I didn't truly deserve to be happy. I always thought my marriage would make up for all the happiness I lacked as a child. Vikram was good looking and wealthy, but none of that really mattered to me. I wanted to know who he was inside. I wanted to connect with my husband on an emotional level, but Vikram did not look like someone who was ready for that on our wedding day. My parents pulled me to the side and warned me not to do anything during the wedding. They were afraid I'd change my mind and run away. I felt like laughing at that very moment. I thought they wanted to at least hug me and tell me how much they'll miss me. Even if it was a lie, I wanted to hear them say it. None of that happened. All I got was threats and unnecessary talks about being a dutiful wife. After the wedding, I was told that Vikram and I were going to move to Australia. Yes, I was only informed after the marriage. No one told me I'd be moving before the wedding. Maybe they thought it wasn't important since my opinion would not matter anyway. And my wedding was horrible. My wedding night had to be miserable. I was a virgin. Yes, I was a very shy virgin who hadn't even kissed a boy's cheek before. I did not know what to expect that night. So I was a nervous mess. When Vikram and I got to our hotel room, he just turned off the lights and went to sleep. No, I did not feel relieved. I felt stuck. It's not because he did not touch me. Didn't even know anything about sex back then. What hurt me was the fact that the man I married could not even start a conversation with me. I tried talking to him on our way to the hotel that night, but I could just tell that his replies were forced and uninterested. He did not even tell me good night before he laid down on the bed and fell asleep that night. As a girl who was already quite damaged, I felt like I had made the biggest decision of my life by marrying a stranger. Do you know what the worst part was? It was not even my decision at all. My parents chose him for me. When Vikram and I moved to Australia, I tried to start a new life there. Even though I was quite disappointed in the husband I got, I was determined to make our marriage work. I tried starting conversations with him, making jokes, and even disturbing him while he was busy working. So this worked for a while, and he warmed up to me a little. When I say he warmed up, I meant in his own little way. He would answer my questions, laugh at my jokes, and lean into my touches with time. We were friendly enough to start sleeping together. That was how I got my 2 wonderful children. Vikram and I would have sex 3 times a week or more if we wanted. We'd also talk about random things and joke with each other, but that was it. He was no longer a stranger physically and mentally, but emotionally he was. For many months, I felt like I was greedy for not feeling complete. I felt like he was trying his best to warm up to me, yet I was the one who wasn't satisfied. I actually felt guilty for not being happy. It's something I struggled with internally for a long time. I actually began to hate myself because I was a housewife who just stayed home and awaited her husband's return just so she could feel validated. I saw my daughter and son brought some light into my life when they were born. Their births were 2 years apart, but they play like twins. I love them with every single vein in me. They stopped my emotional problems for a while, but even that was temporary. When they were old enough to go to school, my loneliness came back. I would dwell in my sad thoughts for hours before they returned. What I struggled most with was understanding what love meant. I grew up without love, so I could never really understand what it was or recognize when I was at the receiving end of it. For a long time, I thought my husband loved me and I loved him too, but one day I realized that all we had was an understanding, and understand that we were stuck together for life. So we better not make each other's life difficult. That was when I made my decision. I took the first independent step of my whole life 2 years ago when my husband came back from work, and I told him I wanted to start going to college. He was surprised at my request and did not even take me seriously until I told him the same thing 2 days later. At first, he tried to talk me out of it and talk about how the children needed me, but I told him the children had school and extra lessons. He told me that he earned enough to take us a lifetime, so I should not bother getting into college. He insisted that college was important for me, and it was not about getting a career to make money. After a lot of deliberation and a series of phone calls, yes, he called my parents and his parents to ask for permission. I was finally allowed to start college. When I started college, A part of me felt light and happy. I was already 30 then, but I did not care. I now had something to look forward to every day. I made new friends and learned to laugh a little. College felt like a place to spread my wings and fly as high as I wanted. One day after classes, a guy named Freed, 1828, offered to give me a lift. I politely declined because I already had a car that was designated to drive me home, but Fred was not ready to take no for an answer. He got out of his car and practically begged me to let him give me a ride. I found the situation funny and ridiculous, so I declined once again and left in my designated car. From that day, Fred kept offering me a ride home. At some point, after 2 weeks, I sent my car back and gave in. Feed was so happy. There had been a huge smile on his face. We chatted during the ride home and honestly felt nice to meet someone new. Fred drove me home. The weeks that followed after that, it was not a problem because Vikram was not usually home till 9 p.m. in the night. I closed from college at 5 p.m. Fred and I became friends after 1 month of getting to know each other. It felt nice to have a friend, someone to talk to, and someone who actually wanted to know you without a reason behind it. I could tell that there was a physical attraction between us, but I tried to brush it off because I was still very married to Vikram. I really did, but for a woman who had been deprived of real love all her life, my resistance was not strong enough. One day, Fred and I kissed in this car. From that day on, we exchanged kisses in the car, from kisses to tight hugs, then smooching on day sex. The day it happened, I'd been so shocked that I did not move for a long time. Yes, it happened in his car. It was at that moment I realized I really didn't love my husband, because after it happened, I did not feel any form of regret or shame. I felt liberated and full. I liked it so much I was not afraid to do it again. Fine. It's not something I'm ashamed of saying because I deserve to be happy. I deserve to live a content life. Fred and I continued our secret relationship for 1 more year. I told him I was married long before we got intimate, but he didn't really care. He was okay with the secret moments we shared. Again, a smile, more and live life more purposefully thanks to Fred, but one day it all broke into pieces. On this fateful day, my designated driver came to pick me up. It was an unusual occurrence because I had asked him to stop coming since I usually went home with Fred. The driver insisted and told me he had to drive me home that day. Fred had invited me to his house, so I did not want to disappoint him. I refused to follow my driver and went to Fred's house. My husband was on a business trip and my kids were at Vikram's sister's place, so I did not plan on going back home. Fred cooked dinner for both of us, lit candles, and played some very nice music. It felt like I was in a dream, and to be honest, I didn't really want to wake up. I felt genuinely happy after a long time. I liked the feeling of content I had in that moment. I shared with Fred. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but everything that happened to me in my life had been wrong. I wanted to be selfish for once in my life. Wanted to choose myself, and I did just that. Had a passionate night with a man that was not my husband. The next morning, I woke up in Fred's t-shirt. I was thirsty and went to grab some water to drink from the kitchen. I remember hearing a knock on the door. And when I opened the door, I was shocked to see Vikram standing there. He looked like he could kill me at that moment. I was too shocked to move or say a word. I could see the anger in his eyes that day. The way he glared at me and pushed me out of the way. Fred ran downstairs to see what was happening, and that was when he met Vikram. Vikram punched Fred till he was bleeding. I had been so scared that I started to scream. I got the shock of my life when I saw my designated driver at the door with 2 policemen. That was when everything seemed to make sense. I realized that Vikram must have noticed that I no longer used my designated driver, so started to keep an eye on me. He lied that he was going on a business trip. He just wanted to follow me and catch me red-handed. The driver had followed Fred's car the night before and told Vikram the address. It was a trap. Vikram found out I was cheating on him, so he set a trap for me and Fred. Vikram always wanted to be in control no matter what. I cheated and got out of his control, so he wanted to catch me in the act his own way. I thought that was all, but Vikram had me and Fred arrested. I know some of you might wonder who gets arrested for cheating. Well, Fred and I got arrested, but it was not for cheating. The police found drugs in Fred's garden and in his car, so we were arrested for the illegal possession of drugs. Of course, it was all framed by Vikram. Fred had a heart condition and could not even smoke. How did drugs suddenly appears, and then Vikram was right there to notice it. Our explanations fell on deaf ears and we were detained for 3 days. It was Fred's friend that got us out on bail. That was 2 months ago. Vikram sent me packing and I was served with divorce papers immediately. The only thing I'm worried about now is my children. They mean a lot to me. I don't want Vikram to get full custody in court. What should I do? Should I beg him to take me back for the sake of my children? Please help me. Update. So it's been a year and I decided to add an update since a lot of people read my story. Fred and I are still together. I live with him. I'm still in college trying to finish up and get a job. Fred has been helpful and he's been taking good care of me. Vikram tried his best to get full custody of our children. He even used his wealth, but the court concluded that the children needed me in their lives. We now co-parent cordially and try to maintain a civil relationship for our children. My parents called me just to disown me over the phone when they found out what happened, but I didn't really care. They were never really loving parents to begin with. The first few months after getting caught were horrible, but I took each day seriously and fought my way out. My life is not perfect, but at least for the first time in my whole existence, I chose myself. That's all that matters to me. I now understand what care and love means. I'd rather live a fulfilled life with nothing than an empty one with everything. I lost my wealthy husband, but I got my peace and happiness, which is priceless. I hope my journey to freedom inspires someone else. The journey ends here, guys. Bye.